What up, world? Welcome to a special edition of the Blunt Talk Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Wright, coming to you from the rainy and comfortable confines of Atlantic City, New Jersey. Wherever you may be watching or listening, I thank you as always. Like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel. You can not only check this show out on Patreon, which this episode is a Patreon exclusive for my exclusive subscribers out there. Check the show out this episode. But if you're not only just, you're not able to catch us out on Patreon, definitely check the show out on YouTube, Substack, Spotify, Trovo, and as well as on Podbean. I'm very happy to bring this episode to you guys. But again, this, for most people that will see this, will be exclusively a Patreon exclusive episode. This episode is going to be dedicated to NFL Combine and mock draft. So if you're looking for exclusive mock draft and NFL Combine video and audio information, you're going to have to come exclusively to Patreon. You will not find it on YouTube. You will not find it anywhere else. It's exclusively on Patreon. However, if you're looking for other content, check the other locations. Also, as well, want to definitely give a shout out to one of the big friends of the program or the show, and that'd be StubHub, the number one place in the world for tickets to live events, shows, and concerts. Definitely check that out. Also, as well, for my people out there that are huge subscribers of Viagogo, or they love going to WWE Raw or getting out to these latest concerts and events, definitely check it out. Viagogo has a lot out there to offer. Like I said, number 2 leading ticket getter in the world for tickets to live events, concerts, and events and real shows. But nonetheless, we're going to get into all of this content that I have. I have a jam-packed episode for you guys. This episode is the NFL Combine mock draft episode. Now, I'm kind of giving you the mock drafts from a week ago. Now, bear with me. A lot of them are still coming back out. I'm not going to do an episode every week dedicated to other people's mock draft. This episode is primarily going to be dedicated to people within the industry that I see that are prominent, that are usually dead right, or for the most part, 85 to 90% right. When determining draft positions or potential spots where guys may fall or land. Be that as it may, I've kind of done a little bit of reading and a little bit of outsourcing, gathering information there. So a lot of information to go into as far as that's concerned. Also as well, I'll also be delivering what I think at some point will be my mock draft. Now, funny enough, guys, I've never done a mock draft. I never really was a fan of mock drafts. Mock drafts, kind of useless within the first month leading into the draft, because there's a lot of rampant speculation, a lot of this and that. Typically, outside of the number 1 pick of the draft, you don't even really have a general idea of where the player may be going to. A lot of times, analysts are very, very much wrong about where guys are going to land. There's but a few analysts that, stick their neck out there from, the draft that just ended going into the next draft, making mock selections and, preliminary predictions and, things like that. So it's a guessing game at the end of the day is basically what I'm trying to say. But all that being said, I will have a mock draft. I will do one starting next week going forward. So as each episode comes out, you won't just hear about anybody else's mock drafts. You'll hear about mine as well. And again, I'm happy to bring this content to you guys. So again, continue to plug in. And I thank you. Love you guys always for doing this. But getting into the start, of this episode, several mock drafts that I went over were a lot of the 3.0 mock drafts. You got Daniel Jeremiah, who's a phenomenal draft expert, formerly of the Baltimore Ravens, formerly of the Philadelphia Eagles. I believe he spent some time with the Cleveland Browns as well. Daniel Jeremiah, he had a mock 3.0 draft that came out that was very good. Mel Kiper, his 3.0 mock draft. And also John Costco of Pro Football Focus. He had like a 1.0, I guess, rough draft that he brought out there that I definitely felt like I had to bring this, content to you guys. But looking at it, for the most part, what I think is interesting, and to give you a format of how I'm going to present this to you, I went over not all 32 teams. So to be quite honest, the way I did it was I went over the guys that I know that are the most prominent first round selections, the biggest switches and swaps that a lot of these analysts think may potentially happen. And then my personal opinion on what I think will happen will be at the end. So to get started, we're going to go into Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft. He had a 3.0 mock draft here. As you can see, he went into Cam Ward going number 1 to the Titans. I think that's kind of like the worst kept secret now, known to man. Before, it kind of seemed like the Titans were definitely dead set on possibly getting a defensive player. That's definitely, died down as time has went on and things have percolated. It clearly shows that Cam Ward is going to be the number one quarterback selected, or number one player selected on the board. Number 2 in his mock draft, he had Abdul Carter from Penn State, edge rusher, going to the Browns. I can't really argue with that move. I think especially you need to pair somebody with Myles Garrett, especially that you gave him the money. And I think this also, too, is because no one really has an idea if they really do want to draft the quarterback high in that spot. But I'll contest and speak on that in a little bit. Nonetheless, Shedeur Sanders, Daniel Jeremiah had him going number 3 to the New York Giants. I've had a lot to say on this topic and subject myself. I really felt like the Giants have been very, very much afraid to draft for African-American quarterback. Nonetheless, it looks like that may change this year with a lot that's, been coming out of the, grapevine, NFL grapevine. I have an episode dedicated to that you'll be able to check out on YouTube and Spotify and later at Patreon, but it'll be detailing that. But nonetheless, going a bit further, Travis Hunter going to the Patriots at number 4. Number 5, Jalen Walker, edge rusher out of Alabama. Curse my mouth. Oof. Edge rusher out of Georgia, going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Running back Ashton Jeanty from Boise State going to the Raiders. I kind of like that selection. You got tackle from Missouri, Armand Membu, going to the Jets. They desperately need one. Mason Graham, defensive tackle, going to the Panthers at number 8. Number 9, he had Jahad Campbell going to the Saints. Linebacker from Alabama. And at number 10, he had Will Campbell, offensive tackle from LSU, going to the Bears. Now, there were some other notable selections that he made. He also had Matthew Golden, wide receiver from Texas, going to the Dallas Cowboys. He had Malachi Starks, who I've been following a lot as a player, a defensive player that I kind of hope, potentially falls to Philadelphia. He had him going to Miami at 13, 14, he had Tyler Warren being drafted in that spot. At 15, he had Will Johnson, cornerback from Michigan, going to Atlanta. And number 20, which I thought was interesting, he had Omarion Hampton, running back out of North Carolina, going to the Denver Broncos. He had Jackson Dart going number 21 to Ole Miss. Number 22, he had wide receiver Ted McMillan going to the Los Angeles Chargers. 23rd spot, he had Maxwell Hairston, cornerback, phenomenal cornerback out of Kentucky, going to the Green Bay Packers. And then number 24, he had Nick Amanuwari, safety out of South Carolina, going to the Minnesota Vikings to replace Harrison Smith, to potentially replace Harrison Smith at the safety spot. But nonetheless, to review in a nutshell, Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft. And at 32, he had the world champion Philadelphia Eagles selecting Shamar Stewart, edge rusher out of Texas A&M. I don't really have too many arguments with his mock draft. The only ones that I probably would contest with is I don't know if Abdul Carter goes that high now at number 2 with the foot injury issues and the questions being there. I could definitely see Jalen Walker going to the Jaguars because Trayvon Walker from Georgia didn't work out. Are the Giants going to draft Shedeur Sanders? Also, too, I liked Will Campbell going to the Bears. Definitely need to get, Caleb Williams some help. Omarion Hampton, I don't know if a running back goes that early. Now, do keep in mind, we're all coming off a season where the running back is no longer undervalued. Obviously, if you have that special running back, you have that guy. I think teams are going to be a little bit more, for lack of better words, hesitant before they get rid of a guy. But I don't know if a running back, Omarion Hampton, he's a good young running back. I like him a lot out of North Carolina. I don't know if he's the number 1 running back going off the board at that spot. I think he's going to be the number 1 running back going off the board. I just don't think he's going to be off the board at 20. I could be wrong, but that's why Dan Jeremiah gets paid the big bucks. But nonetheless, I disagree with him with a couple of those selections. I like Ted McMillan going to the Chargers. I think they definitely need a wide receiver, so that goes without saying. Jackson Dart going to Pittsburgh. This is interesting. Now, it's interesting because Anybody who knows that Mike Tomlin was very, very big on Jalen Hurts when he was coming out. He liked Jalen Hurts a lot. For whatever reason, they didn't pull the trigger. Jalen Hurts wound up going to the Eagles instead of the Steelers. The rest is history. That being said, Jackson Dart, from Daniel Jeremiah's own mouth, I can attest to this because I watched the combine footage, and he quoted this. He said that Jackson Dart reminds him a lot of Jalen Hurts. So I can see the tangible reason there. That's an interesting pick for me because I definitely feel like if this guy gets if they can get an offensive line, that's a guy they can potentially build with. Will Johnson going to Atlanta is definitely a solid pick. I mean, if you're the Falcons, you need a corner. You needed a corner like yesterday, so no question there. Malachi Starks going to the Miami Dolphins. I can see that because with Javon Holland going to the Giants, 3-year, $45 million deal, I could definitely understand why, free agency, that outlook. But I don't know if Miami's smart enough to draft a safety that high. But yeah, essentially, that was Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft. And even Shamar Stewart being edge rusher coming out of Texas A&M going to the Eagles. I could definitely even see that move happening. However, I don't think the Eagles are going to sit in that 32nd spot. I do think the Eagles are going to try to trade that pick potentially. If there's nothing there, they're just going to draft the best player available. But I don't really see Philadelphia really sitting in that spot at 32. Going to Mel Kiper's 3.0 draft, which I thought was very, very precarious because, of course, you guys will see here in the link in the description, you have to have an ESPN Plus subscription to see his whole mock draft. So I was able to gather some very, very pertinent information from it. The most really outstanding things from Mel Kiper's mock draft that I could really take away was the fact that he had Ashton Jeanty going number 6 to the Raiders. He had Omari Hampton going number 12 to the Cowboys. Now, again, Ashton Jeanty is the best running back in this draft. He's not going to be the first, and I misspoke earlier, so I want to apologize for that. He's not going to be the first running back going off the board. He's definitely going to be number 2. However, the way that they have these mock drafts set up is crazy. And again, you can kind of fuck around with it being that it's, mock draft season. You're in a point in a situation where you could definitely, say this guy's going here, this guy's going there, and it really has no cause and effect or harm. However, I do think Omarion Hampton, as good as he is, seeing him going number 12 to the Dallas Cowboys, that's a lot. That's a lot. I can see Ashton Jeanty going to the Raiders, especially if Shedeur Sanders is not there. Especially if they don't think they can get a guy potentially within that first round outside of within the quarterback realm that can really impact the franchise. I can definitely see the Raiders going to Ashton Jeanty there. That'd be a great pick. They need another running back, so that doesn't hurt. But Omarion Hampton going number 12 to the Cowboys, I just don't see the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, don't get me wrong. Dallas Cowboys made some dumbass decisions. I just don't see them necessarily grabbing Omarion Hampton at number 12. I see them possibly going maybe edge rusher, maybe possibly wide receiver, maybe even offensive lineman. But running back, bit high. Going a bit further, though, he also has the Philadelphia Eagles selecting Walter Nolan, defensive tackle out of Mississippi. Walter Nolan, as you guys will see here on the screen, for those that are able to see the visual of this, for my audio subscribers, Walter Nolan's a good defensive tackle. He comes out of that Mississippi ilk, Philadelphia, having a history of drafting Fletcher Cox. I can see where Mel Kiper's going with this. He's going off the history and the tendencies of what they typically do around the draft. Completely get it. Walter Nolan, like I said, good defensive tackle. Definitely is going to be a guy who's potentially be a starter in the NFL. But we'll see. Like I said, I don't see the Eagles staying at 32 and drafting in that spot. And then last but not least, we're going to get to John Costco from Pro Football Focus. His mock draft, like I said, his mock draft is technically a 1.0. His mock draft, now this is the most interesting mock draft that I came across that I definitely wanted to discuss with you guys. He had the New York Giants going up from 3rd to number 1 to trade with the Tennessee Titans, essentially do a pick swap. Now, as you guys will see here from my visual audio, from my visual people, from my audio subscribers, essentially what it is a pick swap of 3-1, and some second round picks got moved around. And essentially the Giants will have the number 1 pick. Tennessee will be picking 3rd. And with that selection, the Giants will pick Cam Ward. Now, it's well known that the Giants have kind of really liked Cam Ward a lot throughout this process. I don't know if they have the balls to make that move because, let's be honest, from the words of John Mara, my patience is running thin. And if you draft a quarterback that high, you're asking for more time that you may possibly don't have, being that you've made so many horrendous decisions that's cost you. Especially the one being where you let your running back go to a division rival, and then he goes on to have like one of the greatest seasons ever and win a Super Bowl. So yeah, shit like that. Then compounding the fact that you lost, a great safety last year. Now you lost other good defensive players this year. So it's just not looking great. So I don't know, but that would be a move that would make sense if you're the Giants. Definitely getting Cam Ward. John Costco had Shedeur Sanders going number 2 to the Cleveland Browns. Interesting here, he had Jackson Dart, which out of all the mock drafts that I've seen so far, this was the highest I've seen Jackson Dart going. He had Jackson Dart going number 3 to Tennessee. Number 4, he had the New England Patriots instead of selecting Travis Hunter, which is most common on most mock drafts. He had the New England Patriots selecting Will Campbell, tackle out of LSU. Again, solid pick, makes sense. Drake makes some weapons and some help on the interior. Especially protection standpoint wise. Then you got the Jaguars actually selecting Travis Hunter, which again makes sense. I understand it. The Raiders actually getting Ted McMillan with the 6th pick. He had Abdul Carter falling to number 7 to the Jets, which I think would be a very interesting pick if that actually does happen. If Abdul Carter does fall to the Jets there, I think that's a hell of a steal for the New York Jets. Now, what has been most consistent in all these mock drafts so far is that they have had Mason Graham going number 8 to the Carolina Panthers, defensive lineman out of Michigan. I personally think that whenever you have a lot of consensus on this early on one pick, it should worry you a bit, especially being the Carolina Panthers because, no knock on Dan Morgan, but with David Tepper there, do you really trust this organization or have any faith that they know what the fuck they're doing? And then you got the Saints picking edge rusher out of Texas A&M, Shamar Stewart at number 9. And he's got number 10, Donovan Ezaraku, edge rusher out of Boston College, going to the Chicago Bears. And, other notable selections. He had the Cowboys picking Tyler Warren out of Penn State, tight end. He had Malachi Starks going number 15 to the Atlanta Falcons. Number 17, he had Will Johnson going to the Bengals. Number 20, another mock draft where it looks like the Broncos are definitely leaning running back. Ashton Jeanty going to the Broncos. And then number 27, the Ravens getting Luther Burden III, wide receiver out of Missouri. I definitely think that there's a theme with all these mock drafts before we wrap up this episode. Broncos are definitely looking at a running back. The Panthers are definitely looking at a defensive lineman. And for a fact, Ashton Jeanty is going within the top 10. So with that being said, I think everything else is pretty much a gamble. I'm very interested to see where Cam and Shedeur land. I think Shedeur Sanders would be great with the Giants. I don't know if the Giants will have the balls to necessarily make that move, but we shall see. That's going to do it for this mock draft episode. Patreon exclusive, guys. I thank you guys for always watching. Take care as always. I'll have another episode coming up within next week, going over the mock draft. In that episode, I'll start it off with my own personal mock draft, so that'll be great. It'll be my first time doing that. So thank you guys as always. Take care, like, share, subscribe, and enjoy the rest of your day.